Welcome back to another episode of Bloons Crash Course, and in this episode we will be covering one of the more prominent strategies in the upper arenas, especially in free power-ups: Spike Factory, Engineer, and Farm. These Spike Factory and Engineer are towers that we have not yet covered in this series, so let me go over their upgrades. So for Tier 1, we have Bigger Stacks, which just makes the pierce slash damage more prominent, so you get more pierce per shot of the pile. And that's pretty useful for group balloons and just raw damage. It's just a pretty general upgrade that you want. Same for faster production, which increases the rate of spike production, as you would assume. Then you have, for the Tier 2 upgrades, White Hot Spikes, which allows it to hit lead balloons. And that's pretty useful because in some strategies, as this one, which we're going to look into, it's going to be a main damage dealer. So having that lead damage is always vital. And even faster production is the same as the faster production from Tier 1, but just even faster. Tier 3 is Spiked Ball Factory, which allows it to do extra damage to ceramics, and is pretty useful in most scenarios, especially if you're trying to have it tank like a Moab or ceramics. Moab Shredder is pretty specialized. You usually want to use it when you have enough space in the map to isolate some Moab Shredder spikes, and you know they won't be overrun by balloons. So that's kind of one of the benefits of this Engineer combo, because you can get rid of most of the balloons while having Moab Shredder spikes to clean up and pop the Moab layers. We're moving to the Tier 4 now, and this is an upgraded version of the spiked ball. It's spiked mines now, which actually explode, and I think they do 3 or more damage. It's somewhere around there on explosion. And every spike also explodes because they come with mini spikes on them. And now we have the ability, which is Spike Storm, which covers the entire map in a carpet of spikes. And this is pretty useful for mob defending of like BFBs and the ZMGs, and also maybe for an all-out in case you need it. And let's hop into a Engineer, which is going to be all the way at the end, over here. For Tier 1, we get Sentry Gun, which spawns sentries around it. If I remember correct, you can have up to 3, but it's generally going to stay around 2 sentries at a time. And they kind of spawn randomly around the perimeter of the sentry, Engineer. And they have, I think, 2 pierce, but 1 damage. So they're basically 1 dart monkeys. And then we have a 9-inch nails, which increases the pierce, so you can hit 8 balloons at once, and then also pop frozen balloons, which can be useful in some scenarios, but you're typically not going to use it for the frozen popping power. Faster engineering just allows you to have 4 or 5 sentries at a time. And then larger surface area increases the range of the sentries and also the primary engineer. For Tier 3, we have Cleansing Foam, which de-camos and de-regens, and also pops lead. So this is where we start seeing some of the very important aspects of the engineer. And then we also got Sprockets, where it increases the fire rate of the engineer and the sentries. For Balloon Trap, it can hold up to 500 RBE, which is Red Balloon equivalent, and it gives you about half of it back in cash. So that's pretty nice, especially if you're trying to drain an opponent and they can't really rush you without giving you money. That's kind of one of the main reasons that Engineer is so popular. And then Overclock allows you to basically double the attack speed of any tower for 60 seconds. This doesn't really help with farming because farms are set per round rather than per minute or per second. So yeah. But it is pretty nice to have with Spike Factory. Before we hop into a game, I want to cover some of the defending techniques. Primarily how to defend like Moabs and BFBs and all stuff like that. So say we have an engineer here. Typically you want engineers to have limited map range, so you can kind of isolate where the trap goes. And let's say we have a, I don't know, 2-2. Now we can go 3-2, just in case anything like spy. I'm gonna let that build up for like a couple of minutes, and let's change this to around 20. And let's send a Moab. Not Moab, BFB. And let's actually buy 2 traps, because we're gonna defend it pretty well. Let's send some leads beneath, and then let's buy our Spike Storm. Like this. You probably want a 2-4. And then this should be capable of defending most insides. In case the Spike Storm isn't capable of cleanup or the 2 traps isn't enough, you can always resell the Spike Storm for another trap in the back if you want it back here or wherever the ceramics will be. I think you can defend with just 1 trap and microing. So let's try that out. Let's give it a few seconds. There we go. Of course, your opponent will definitely be trying to send stuff underneath. That's what most players will do. And that is to take up the piers of the Spike Storms. So you may be wanting to wait a few seconds before you use the ability, so it's directly on top like this. And as you can see, the Spike Storm is capable of cleaning up pretty well. This 3-2 Spike Factory is going to come in clutch if you already have it up. However, if you don't, you may need to just sell and rebuy a trap in the back to catch any ceramics. And this is pretty much also able to defend just regular Moab. However, if they do send like tons of zebras underneath or tons of leads, you may want to sell and rebuy your trap just in case. We'll see this go through. Of course, the engineer does a little bit of damage, but it shouldn't matter too much. Now that was a bit close there, so you should always just be a bit wary of under defending. And the idea for a ZMG, let's say around 23, is just Spike Storming, and you usually have 2 Bloon traps. So Spike Storming pretty frequently, and also trying to buy a Spike Mines in the back. They did buff it to be $9,000, but you'll make money as well from the Bloon Trap ceramics. You see here, we're getting a ton of money, and that should actually clean up pretty well. If you get scared, you can always Spike Storm one more time, but I don't know if we need it. We may. I would here, just because it's so close, but it looks like we did not. So that's just a general idea of defending. And for late game, it's pretty much the same thing, just you want to buy more Spike Mines in the back, and also spam Spike Storms. And you also are thinking of overclocking the Spiked Mines if you have enough money. For the round limit, I would say you don't want to get past around 33 or 34, because you're going to be at a point where Spike Storm Micro is not going to be enough to pop those ZMG layers, especially not early enough for you to be able to pop them into Moabs for cleanup with your Spiked Mines in the back. So we get our first game here against Dragman 0818, and hopefully we get a land map. Okay, this isn't really a land map. I'm gonna skip it, especially since it's a double path. In double path maps, you aren't really going to see a good usage of Spike Engineer, Spike Farm Engineer. Edgy Farm Spike is also what it's called. That ended in a water map, so I just skipped it. Well, not skipped it. I left. I don't really care about losing a game. We get a kind of decent opponent, it looks like. Might be an alt account. Hopefully it is. We get another water map. Hopefully we don't get that again. Pinball Wizard. It can be used here. I just don't recommend it. So hopefully they skipped. I don't know about this opponent. Worst case, I can just leave again. And I don't know if they're skipping. So I'm just gonna not waste my time. I'll wait till 10 seconds. Oh, they skipped, good. Didn't have to enter another game. And again, a double path map. In these like double path maps, I would recommend either using my other two strategies I've posted so far, Dirt Farm Wizard or Tech Farm Wizard, as those are not very map dependent, besides like just having land and enough land to farm. And yeah, again here, I would use Tech Farm Wizard. Okay, YBR, this is good. This is pretty much what we would hope for a Spike Engineer map. And you usually want to use NG Farm Spec on like Mountain Pass, Offside, Super Monkey Lane, YBR, Waddle Resorts, and other maps like that. And since our main goal here is to anti-stall and be pretty aggressive, we are going to start with a 0-0 engineer rather than our farm. And the goal of this is to prevent him from getting money from his banana farm. And we want to send a decent amount of balloons here, just to try and force enough defense. And I'm sending blue balloons over the top to get some lives off of him as quick as I can. And here we go for our more bananas, round 2/3, because we will have enough money from saving up. We're gonna be very careful of our red hot spike usage. And I bought a Sentry for two purposes. One, it's capable of defending against pinks in most scenarios. Sometimes you might need a faster engineering or another engineer. But it's also pretty good to help anti-stall. As you can see from like round 3, I was already struggling without any help, but with the Sentry, I'm capable of anti-stalling pretty well now. And here we go for our banana farm, banana plantation. I'm not rushing the Lightning Wizard because anything that I can send currently is not effective. However, now that it's round 6, Space Black Bloons start to become an issue for Lightning Wizard. So I'm going to send that. He does buy Fireball, but I don't know if that's capable of properly defending well enough on this map. He buys another tower, 0-1 Ninja, and I think that's good enough to defend for a while. It's not worth it to keep sending. And we're going to be pretty aggressive mid-game. That's kind of where our focus is at, and why we're being kind of passive, but also not wasting all of our money on random balloons. Black Bloons are kind of tricky, so I'm going to buy another engineer here. I did buy a 2-1. This is because Black Bloons kind of get nicely layered over the top. Let's do this, buy a Sprockets and another engineer. This is kind of annoying, but it shouldn't be too bad. Always feel free to use a spike, but try not to use all of them. They come in handy for one balloons later on. And I'm not going for a second plantation because it's the start of round 9, because I need to afford a balloon trap, which is going to be very expensive. It's going to be almost $4,000 just for the upgrade alone, and then another like 1.8K for the prior upgrades. However, you're already investing so much that you are probably going to have enough money to just sell some of your other engineers and spike the back. Just a 2-3 engineer is alone $2,000. So that's always nice to keep in mind. So you only need 1.8K on hand to defend. And if your opponent tries to do this, you can boost. A lot of players try and choke rush Spike Factory Engineer if you don't have enough spikes in the back. Don't be afraid to boost. You can always just sell your 2 plantations for a Spike Swarm if you sell your trap in time. Or you can go for a double trap if they don't send camos over the top. I could be aggressive here. He went for his farm, so I'm going to do that. Send some blacks and some zebras over the top with pinks, yellows, and pinks. This is able to force a boost, and he buys a tack shooter, which is probably enough to defend. He did over-defend there by selling both of his farms, so I'm going to buy white height spikes, just in case he tries to send anything sketchy. Some players tend to be very defensive and all out after selling some of their farms. He didn't buy any permanent defense, so I'm going to send the same rush again, especially layered in with round 16 AI, and this might actually just kill him straight up. And yeah, there we go. That game, he had a decent amount of rushing from him with those camo yellows and also just plain regen yellows. So those are kind of two main rushes that get sent to NG Farm Spike Factory. They're not good rushes, they're just choke rushes, so you might lose it to it once and because it's a surprise, and then just be on guard against it. And our next opponent doesn't seem that skilled, but it's alright. As long as we get a decent map, hopefully. Let's get him to skip. If not, then I guess he gets a free 2,000 medallions. Okay, we get another decent map for this. If you are struggling on one path short maps, this is a pretty good option. So Mountain Pass, the Rift, what other short maps? I guess if you want to count Waddle as short, I have already listed that before, but it's all right. Typically you want your engineer towards the start or wherever there's a good overlap / straight line. The point of having it at the start is to anti-stall, and the idea of anti-stalling is to end the round as quick as possible, because if your opponent is ecoing, they won't be able to eco long enough to get a good enough and supplementary eco, if that makes sense. So they will be losing out on money compared to if you didn't anti-stall. And the same idea exists against farms, where their income is not going to be as great as it would have been if you let them farm without trying to do anything about ending the round early. And it's not going to be a major difference. Like, you're not going to end around like 50 seconds earlier out of like a minute, but it's going to be out probably around 6 seconds per round, depending on the length of the round. And that's typically going to be a pretty major component of the game. So our opponent did send pinks there. I'm kind of getting unfortunate engineer placements. It'd be more optimal for them to be placed around here, like in the center or a bit down here where they can hit a lot of the map compared to over here where their angles are kind of awkward and they're kind of iffy with their range. A way to supplement that, like get rid of it, is to place farmers if you have enough. I don't recommend this if you don't have a lot of medallions spare, but go for some farmers, and these take up the potential spots for the sentries to spawn. So you're going to start seeing more sentries spawn over here or in a different area. I'm not too fond of them also spawning up here because this is so early in the map. It is kind of greedy right now to go for that, but our opponent is playing an eco strategy, so I'm not too scared. And yeah, we're going to start seeing some more sentries spawn in the middle and none spawn under here. Our opponent goes for a super monkey, which can be pretty easily exploited. I don't want to kill them though, because I do want to show off some of the later aspects of this strategy. So I'll hopefully let them survive to like around 25-ish, maybe a bit later. It is kind of iffy because I'm not able to play most optimally, I guess, in this early game. However, I am trying to educate you guys. I would have gone for a trap there and not for another farm if our opponent trying to force it. Okay. They were kind of okay there. I would definitely recommend, if you're facing this strategy, to be more aggressive in the early game. Because you are going to wish you had and try to prevent them from farming, especially if your farms are not that good or your strategy is not that good against aggressive stuff. That you want to have them in a weaker position, or bring them down to your level at least. To farm, we can go for a BIA or a banana factory. Usually you want to go for a BIA if you have enough time, because that's going to easily steamroll into a couple factories later on and supplementary defense for pretty much everything. And it's especially beneficial if you are capable of sending rushes while doing so and trying to be aggressive. Engineer is one of those towers where you want to be aggressive while also farming. But it's okay if you get into a drain game because you have the engineer creating money for you as your opponent tries to rush you back. I was a bit short on my BIA there. They kind of nerfed it a few updates ago. It costs like $300 more or something like that. But that's okay. You don't need to keep your farmers there anymore. You could sell them, or you could keep them. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes it can be a bit annoying for players to have that up because they might want to micro in this position or quickly buy something there. You see that quite often in offside, where everything is kind of localized towards the center. So if you have a ton of farmers there, it's going to be quite annoying to defend stuff. So you usually see them selling that after they buy the Bloon trap. Some people buy it back to try and defend ZMG layers, or pop ZMG layers / BFBs with a sprockets. However, that's higher tech, and I won't be going into that for this video. I'm gonna go for a farm. However, I don't really recommend it. In this situation, if I was one of you guys, I would recommend just sending a BFB, a Moab, whatever, just trying to be aggressive here. And our opponent rushes with rainbows underneath. I'm going to buy a Bloon trap back here, just because it's kind of risky and I don't want to risk it. The Bloon trap basically spawned on top of the spike balls. I'm buying double Bloon trap. You don't have to, however, it is highly recommended, especially for these like round 20s, or you might even want 3 or 4 Bloon traps if it's against Cobra. And that's because you are going to be getting a ton of ceramics back here. And I think I'm fine. Yeah, I still have that remaining Bloon trap there, but that just means it's not gotten enough pops or eaten enough balloons to refresh. If our opponent could send a BFB, that'd be pretty nice. And I'll go for my factory now. Okay, a bit short. They might actually die here, hopefully not. Okay, they're fine. Let's see if they send a BFB. I'd try to defend minimally, as in just buying like 1 or 2 spikes, 1 spike storm if they send like a BFB. If you're going an eco strategy like they are, I would recommend just trying to be as eco heavy as you can, especially in these early arenas without powers. Preferably if you're playing like boost only, like Ceramic Crucible, you want to be kind of a greedy against like farm strategies, I would say, or other eco players, because most players are not going to be equipped enough with their skill set to punish you for actually rushing at all. And we don't have to worry about Moabs when they're this spaced out. I would recommend maybe getting a bit scared and buying a couple Bloon traps, or buying a spiked mines if you have enough money. If they try to all out you with like, okay, he's dead. Moabs under a BFB. However, you can always just spike storm if that's the case. Thank you for playing. And I think that's pretty much it for this game, for this episode. Check out my other ones if you guys are interested in learning other land strategies, like Tack Farm Wizard or Dar Farm Wizard. And comment what other strategies you guys would like to see. I'm thinking of making a boat tutorial next. And peace out. Thank you guys for watching.